A favorite story for many Christians comes in the 10th chapter of the Gospel of Luke. In this story, Jesus is talking with a number of his followers and others who were there to hear what he had to say. And a lawyer came to him and asked what he must do to inherit eternal life. Instead of answering the question, Jesus asked a question. He said, "What does the Scripture say?" The lawyer replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself." Jesus said, "You're right. Go and do this, and you will have eternal life." And the lawyer, though, in an attempt to justify himself, said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?"
In the story of the Good Samaritan, the lawyer who asked Jesus the question, "Then who is my neighbor?" was probably hoping for a very different answer than the one he receives. The lawyer may have wanted Jesus to say that his neighbor was his friends and family, or at least people he liked, or maybe the family who lived next door. But instead, Jesus answered with a story, and a rather surprising one at that. In the story of the Good Samaritan, our initial focus is on the priest and the Levite, who walk by the wounded man and do nothing to help. But we don't know anything about the man they were being asked to care for. In fact, none of the three, the priest, the Levite, or the Samaritan, knew what they would be getting into if they stopped to help. But the one who showed mercy, regardless of who the man was or what he had done, was the true neighbor. While working on this project, I've discovered that the story of the Good Samaritan has a lot to tell us about how people feel about ministry with the homeless. The priest and the Levite probably felt completely justified in ignoring the man who'd been beaten, just as we often do when faced with people who are homeless. We assume that they're all drug addicts and criminals, people whose poor choices have brought them to a place where they no longer deserve our help. We fear being taken advantage of. I mean, shouldn't homeless people just stop being lazy and get a job? And anyway, we don't really have time to get involved in people's personal lives. We have our own stuff to take care of. Jesus wasn't buying any of those excuses. Our job isn't to judge, it's to love. And there are plenty of ways that individuals and churches can love those who are homeless, not least of which is helping to feed, clothe, and shelter them.
One way you can help people who are homeless is by meeting their basic needs, like food. Homelessness is often accompanied by malnourishment, and there are lots of ministries you can connect with to feed people who are struggling. New Life United Methodist Church is just one church that feeds the homeless. This congregation of 70 committed disciples feeds hundreds of people each week and has volunteers who come from other churches all around the area.
I think why New Life is so important is that it puts you right in the heart of the ministry, right in the heart of the folks that need the help, and can put you out of your comfort zone a little bit. I think it's easy to be isolated from that ministry when you're out in the suburbs, but I think you really need to get downtown and see where the need is, and then that's something that can stay with you throughout the week.
Another way you can help the homeless is to make clothing available to them. Many homeless people dress in layers to account for changing weather conditions, but most don't have the money to buy clothing. The United Methodist Free Store gives people the opportunity to select for items of clothing that they need.
I love working in outreach with our youth group and serving populations that are struggling. I really love the concept of the Free Store, based on the idea of grace, that indeed all the items are free and that there aren't a lot of questions that go with that you can remain dignified and come in and shop for your true needs.
In addition to feeding programs and clothing ministries, churches can also build relationships with local agencies. In many communities, there are organizations dedicated to helping the homeless. Often these agencies focus on specific factors that contribute to homelessness, including poverty, trauma, mental health issues, addiction, and crisis intervention. The YWCA Family Shelter in Central Ohio provides emergency shelter to women and families. Local churches support the shelter both financially and by preparing meals for the residents, which gives them the chance to build relationships with the people who stay there.
You know, going into it, I was really scared. Just because, seeing movies and just hearing things, I was really scared and nervous. And with my mental health, it didn't help it. any better to make me feel. But when I got there and I actually seen what it was and how the staff, they were great to me. There was actually someone that cared about me. And I can say they were wonderful, all of them. The churches that come in to feed us, they were great. It was a church that supplied Christmas for my children. They were just wonderful.
Community Development for All People seeks ways to meet both physical and spiritual needs. Here you can find homeless people and people with houses worshiping together. People share meals and shop at the Free Store. Christian servants help homeless people become disciples of Jesus Christ and work to get them into long-term affordable housing.
It affects people in so many different ways because not having safe, affordable housing, people who need housing are desperate, and the less funds they have for housing, the more likely they are to end up in inadequate housing. And if they are in a house that's not been rehabbed, then their utility bills are higher. So everything is higher. They're paying an unnecessary amount of rental for their housing, and then all the utilities cost them more. The sense of home ownership gives a sense of pride and purpose. Even in children, they understand that children who live in a home where people own it, it gives them a better sense of self-esteem.
These holistic ministries change people's lives from the inside out.
We kind of made a promise to ourselves we were going to turn our life around. When we got here, we were staying with our niece on Wager Street for a few days, and Mike found us a place in Grove City, and the church, the Free Store, helped us get things. And so I went back to service like on Thursday morning or something, and I really liked the church. Then my husband we were out in Grove City for about 7 months. My husband had a heart attack the 5th month we were here, and we ended up losing our home out there. So we came back to stay again on Wager Street, and I started walking to the church. And eventually she was moving. We had nowhere to go. Her neighbor behind, let us live in a basement that literally water poured out of the walls and flooded the whole basement. And we were down there, and Miss Margaret knew it, and I got a job through a temporary agency. And she said, well, we have a place on Hinman that's been unrented for quite some time, and maybe the man will discount the rent for you since this is all you make. And he did, and he let me pay the deposit little by little. Matter of fact, we improved the house some, and he took some of that as the deposit also and got us in there. And we just didn't want to move again. About a year and a half later, and she told us, well, maybe you can buy this. And I said, well, check with the man. She come flying back 5 minutes later. Let's fill out habitat forms. And that's how we ended up with this house. But we kind of made a deal with the Lord that if we got here safely, that we weren't going back in those steps. And I'm proud to say it'll be 6 years in July. We've not touched that messy thing anymore. And I can honestly say that if you let Him control that problem in your life, He will take the urge right away. I mean, we really did. I didn't think we could do it, but you can with God. But I know I was sent here to that church for a reason, and I don't know yet what my total purpose is there, but I'm looking forward to finding out so that I can give back to my Lord. But that's our story. We came here with 28 cents and one duffel bag of clothes. Look what we got now. You can see we got a beautiful home. I call this house God's grace, because without Him I wouldn't have it. 57 years old, I never bought a house. Never mind a brand new house.
Getting to know the stories of people who have been homeless has made me realize that we can't just pass by on the other side of the road. Every person is our neighbor. Every person can be a disciple, and no one should have to live without the housing they need.